Okay, let's dive deep into a figure who saw the world completely differently. A man who seemed to be walking backward into the future while everyone else marched ahead, well, in what he saw as the wrong direction.
We were talking about Viktor Schauberger.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And our guide for this journey is Callum book, Living Energies, which really tries to make sense of a mind described as being inspired by more exalted levels of reality.
But often dismissed,
Right.
tragically ridiculed in his lifetime.
Yeah. So our mission here in this deep dive is to pull out the absolute core of Schauberger's, well, astonishing perspective on energy, water, nature itself.
And he didn't just question conventional science. He believed it was fundamentally misguided, like deeply wrong.
And this wasn't just, theoretical for him. He issued this stark, almost terrifying warning that humanity was on a path to self-annihilation if we didn't change course.
And what's chilling, as the source points out, is how some of those warnings, like the breakdown of the natural water cycle, seem to be playing out right now. You can see it happening.
This source kind of positions him among history's illumined predecessors. People who saw things others didn't, often facing intense opposition from the establishment.
Yeah, like other radical thinkers. His insights were just so far outside the box, they were often just, boom, rejected outright.
So let's unpack his most fundamental idea. What was his core critique of Western science? And how did his view just flip the conventional understanding on its head?
Well, his critique, as presented in this source, is pretty brutal. He saw conventional science as too primitive, operating an octave too low.
An octave too low.
Yeah. It was purely materialistic, he argued, focused on dissecting reality into tiny pieces, but completely missing the dynamic, interconnected whole.
Ah, the classic compartmentalization problem.
Exactly. This compartmentalization meant we couldn't see the forest for the trees, literally and figuratively.
And he thought this led us where
But
exactly?
backwards. He believed science was teaching humanity upside-down methods. And here's the core flip. He argued that the subtle, finer, and higher energies, they aren't produced by physical matter. They are actually responsible for creating physical form and structure in the first place.
Whoa. So energy comes first, then matter takes shape, right?
That's it. Energy first. It's a massive shift in perspective.
And he saw this creative process happening through the interaction of opposites.
Absolutely. This was central to his thinking. He focused on the interplay of complementary forces, not just opposing ones. Pairs like heat and cold, electricity and magnetism.
On outward motion versus inward motion.
Right. Centrifugens and centripetence and suction and pressure. He saw nature constantly balancing these forces to create vitality and structure.
Which brings us right to his central defining concept, implosion versus explosion. This is where his nature-based view really clashes hard with modern tech.
Oh yeah, this is absolutely key. He saw implosion as nature's fundamental creative method. Think centripetal motion drawing inward, cooling, synthesizing, building up, life-affirming.
Like a whirlpool forming or a seed growing, pulling energy in.
Exactly like that. And explosion.
That was the bad guy in his view.
Pretty much. That, for Schauberger, was the signature of modern destructive technology. Centrifugal motion bursting outward, heating, disintegrating, breaking down, life-negating.
Combustion engines, bombs, power plants.
All of it. He saw them all as harnessing this destructive principle, whereas nature uses the creative, implosive one. Understanding this distinction is just vital to grasping everything else he talked about.
Okay, that gives us a solid framework. Now let's talk about something he knew intimately, something he saw as totally foundational to life itself. Water. His time as a forest warden really connected him to it.
He developed this incredibly profound, almost reverent view of water. For him, it wasn't just HRO, not at all.
What was it then?
He saw it as a carrier of life. And pushing even further, the source of what we call consciousness. He believed healthy, flowing water actively attracts consciousness, like a magnet.
So a living being, basically.
Exactly. He saw water as having a kind of life force that becomes, well, diseased when it's mistreated, heated up, polluted, forced into unnatural straight pipes and channels.
And that sickness passes on.
Crucially, yes. This diseased state is passed on to everything that consumes it or interacts with it, including us.
So how do you keep water healthy? Temperature seems absolutely critical in his view. That plus 4 degrees Celsius anomaly point.
It was vital. The point where water is densest, at plus 4 degrees C, that was the point of maximum vitality for him.
Okay.
He talked about positive temperature gradients, movement towards plus 4 degrees C, cooling, concentrating energy. That's life-affirming. And negative gradients.
moving away from plus 4 degrees C, heating up, dissipating energy, life negating.
Precisely. Those subtle temperature differences, they power water's natural, healthy movement.
Like that famous observation he made about trout, hoarding position in a raging stream.
Yes, that's a great example. He said the trout isn't fighting the current, it's finding the core of the vortex, where the water is densest and coolest, often right at plus 4 degrees C.
It's using the water's own energy, not
Yeah,
fighting it.
exactly. And he also observed how nature protects water from harmful heat and direct light. Things like, vegetation cover along banks, or the water developing natural turbidity.
And its natural motion helps keep it clean, too.
That's what he argued, that natural spiraling vortical motion is key to healthy water. It's like the water's own immune system, inhibiting harmful bacteria and maintaining its structure, its vitality.
He also had a very unconventional view on electrolysis, a basic scientific concept.
Right. He looked at conventional science, splitting water using electricity,
Mhm.
and said, hang on, you're missing something fundamental here.
What was he seeing?
He argued that pure water has a very high dielectric value, meaning it strongly resists carrying an electric current.
Oh.
Conductivity, he said, comes from dissolved impurities in the water, not the water itself. So when science performs electrolysis, he believed they were primarily working with the pollutants, the stuff dissolved in it, not the pure water molecule in isolation.
Interesting. Okay, let's zoom out from the water itself to the larger natural system, the hydrological cycle. He saw a huge difference between a healthy one and, well, a messed up one.
Oh, yeah. This is where his environmental warnings get really concrete, really stark. He distinguished between the full natural cycle and the half-damaged cycle.
And the half cycle is caused by...
Largely by chopping down forests and heating the exposed ground. That breaks the whole system. Rainwater hits that hot, dry ground, and instead of soaking in...
It just runs off, like water on a hot plate, you said.
Exactly. Violent runoff instead of gentle infiltration,
Yeah.
leading to flash floods.
Right.
And then that runoff evaporates really quickly from the surface, which overloads the local atmosphere. That can lead to extreme weather elsewhere, either more flooding or, conversely, devastating droughts.
And it messes with groundwater.
Causes groundwater levels to plummet, and it washes away vital topsoil and nutrients. He called it a biological short circuit. Just ruins the soil's fertility.
And the source describes a truly terrifying ultimate consequence of this broken cycle, something about water being lost.
It's a dire warning.
Yeah.
The source explains Schauberger's view that when storm activity raises water vapor too high in the atmosphere, it gets exposed to powerful radiation.
Okay.
This radiation can actually dissociate the water molecules, break HRO apart. The hydrogen, being lighter, escapes into the upper atmosphere, and according to the source interpreting Schauberger, that water is effectively gone for good from the Earth's cycle.
Wow. Gone for good. That's sobering. So, given that, what's the one essential solution, according to his principles?
The source is totally unambiguous on this.
Yeah.
Massive reforestation, replanting trees. It's the only way to cool the ground, allow water to infiltrate properly again, restore groundwater, and rebuild that full hydrological cycle.
Let's talk about the trees themselves, then. What role did they play in this vital system for him?
Trees are absolute cornerstones of a healthy environment in his view. Total linchpins. They're climate regulators, windbreaks, soil anchors.
They do a lot.
A huge amount. They act like living pumps, drawing water and nutrients up from deep underground and distributing them. The source mentions a single 100-year-old tree producing enough oxygen for dozens of people and evaporating huge amounts of water daily. Just highlights their incredible contribution.
And there's that fascinating link the source makes between the structure of chlorophyll in plants and hemoglobin in our blood.
It's remarkable, isn't it? They have incredibly similar molecular structures. Chlorophyll is centered around magnesium, hemoglobin around iron.
Right.
And the source points out their analogous functions in energy transport, capturing light energy in plants, carrying oxygen in animals.
Oh.
It even mentions studies where chlorophyll was apparently used as a blood substitute in rats.
Oh.
It really suggests a deeper shared principle of life operating at a molecular level.
Incredible. So, beyond the visible world of water and forests, Schauberger saw these fundamental patterns and energies everywhere, like the prevalence of spiral and vertical motion.
Yeah, he saw whirls within whirls as nature's signature movement. It was everywhere, from the spin of galaxies way up there, down to the double helix of DNA or the spiral flow inside a healthy river.
It's everywhere when you look.
Exactly. This inward spiraling motion was the key to vitality and structure in his system.
And he talked about resonance as well.
Yes. He saw resonance as nature's way of enabling free, efficient energy transfer between systems that vibrate in harmony.
And when that's disrupted,
When that natural harmonic interaction is disrupted, say, by unnatural frequencies or damaging forces, the quality and order of life itself just degrades. Things fall apart.
and the concept of dialectics, balancing opposites.
Life, he believed, isn't about one force just winning out. It's about the dynamic balance and synthesis of complementary opposites, like heat and cold, combining to create vitality.
A creative tension.
Precisely. And nature maintains this delicate balance in specific ratios, often linked to the golden ratio, phi, or other specific proportions, which you see reflected again and again in its forms.
Now we have to address one of his most challenging ideas, something that seems to just directly contradict modern physics, his view of the sun.
Ah, yes. This is definitely unconventional, to say the least. He considered the sun a cold, dark body.
Cold and dark, the sun.
Yes, you heard that right. Cold and dark. And he believed it got colder and darker the closer you actually got to it.
That's just wild. I mean, how could he possibly see it that way? Did the source offer any insight into his reasoning there?
Well, the source attempts to explain his perspective.
Okay.
It points to observations like the peculiar behavior of light in an extreme vacuum,
Yep.
or the differing rotational speeds of the sun's outer layers,
Mm-hmm.
especially the slower, cooler activity observed at the poles.
Okay.
Schauberger, with his unique, non-materialistic way of observing, interpreted these not through conventional physics, but through his understanding of implosive, cooling, biomagnetic forces he thought were at play even there.
So it's presented more as an example of how his fundamental worldview led him to radically different conclusions.
Exactly. Radically different conclusions about even the most basic phenomena we think we understand.
He also classified elements in his own way, didn't he?
He did. He saw most elements and their compounds, the physical building blocks, as carbones. These are the female mother substances, the matrix. Oxygen he saw as male, a kind of fertilizing principle activated by the sun's energy. And hydrogen was unique, the carrier substance that held both oxygen and carbon together. It's a highly symbolic, almost alchemical perspective.
And he used terms like dynagens and ethericities. What were those?
These were his terms for energy generators, or energies that he believed were fundamental to life and creation, but operated at a level beyond the detection or understanding of conventional materialistic science.
Sort of the unseen vital forces.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They represent the immaterial, vital energies driving the processes he observed everywhere in nature.
So how did he try to translate these radical principles into practical applications? What kind of technologies did he actually envision or build?
Well, he was all about working with nature's implosive forces, not against them. An early successful example was the log flume he designed for transporting timber at Stirling.
Right, the log flume. How did that work differently from conventional ones? They always had problems, didn't they?
Yeah, conventional ones struggled with logs getting jammed up. They created friction and turbulence. Schauberger designed channels that replicated natural water flow patterns. He used curves and egg shapes to induce cooling, vortical motion.
Making the water denser.
Exactly, making the water dense and powerful in the core of the flow. It carried the logs efficiently with almost no resistance. It was a practical demonstration that his understanding of natural forces actually worked better than standard engineering.
He also had ideas for something as simple as water pipes.
He did. He proposed pipes with spiral forms, maybe lined with specific materials like silver-plated copper.
Why those materials?
The spiral shape and the subtle interaction of the metals were designed to encourage water's natural, cooling, implosive flow, to avoid friction and heat and keep the water vital and energetic.
Which he contrasted sharply with modern water treatment.
Oh, completely. Modern systems that chemicalize water, chlorinate, fluoridate, he believed absolutely destroyed its natural life force. Killed it.
The golden plow is another interesting example, using copper instead of steel.
Yes. He argued that conventional iron or steel plows generated destructive electromagnetic fields that harmed the soil's delicate structure and vitality. Like they literally damaged the earth energies.
But a copper alloy plow.
His golden plow, made of copper alloys, avoided this damaging interaction. He claimed it promoted healthier soil, better water retention, increased yields.
Then he worked on creating natural fertilizer too, using these same principles.
That was his biosynthesis method. It involved fermenting organic matter, but in special egg-shaped chambers.
Egg shapes again.
Always the curves and spirals. Using cooling and vortex motion to create what he called fructogenic energies, basically, forces that generate fruitfulness, vitality. By adding trace elements and using this specific process, he aimed to create a kind of super fertilizer that revitalized the soil naturally, working at a subtle, energetic level.
Okay, now we have to venture into perhaps the most debated and speculative area, his alleged involvement with flying discs during World War II.
Right. The source material does discuss this. It presents it as a highly controversial topic, naturally. There are lots of rumors circulating about his work on disc-shaped devices, possibly for the German government.
But it's murky.
Very murky. Details are often conflicting and shrouded in secrecy, as you'd expect from that era.
What was the core principle behind these alleged devices, as described in the source? What was the idea?
The idea, apparently building on devices like his centripulsar machine, was to create incredibly intense vortices, either in air or water, using rapid rotation and specific shapes, often weaviform or double spiral shapes, inside chambers or disks.
To create an extreme implosion effect.
Exactly. This extreme implosive force, he believed, could cause a kind of molecular collapse or extreme densification of the medium, whether it was air or water.
And that would generate energy.
Generate immense energy, yes, and potentially create levitational or anti-gravitational effects as a result. A bluish light was sometimes reported, which he linked to this powerful biomagnetic energy being released.
So the levitation might have been an unexpected outcome, a side effect of generating such powerful energy rather than the primary goal itself.
That's how the source seems to frame it. It suggests the levitation could be a consequence of harnessing these potent natural implosive forces, forces he believed were far stronger than gravity itself.
Wow. If these principles hold even a grain of truth, what are the massive implications for our world today?
Well, the source suggests they open the door to possibilities like virtually free energy derived directly from natural processes, completely revolutionizing transport, providing simple, natural ways to produce clean, vital water.
Essentially, offering potential solutions to some of our most profound energy and environmental crises.
That's the implication, yes. Potentially world-changing stuff.
But it always comes back to his core philosophy, doesn't it? That these problems stem ultimately from our fundamental worldview.
Absolutely. He argued consistently that the ecological and social mess we find ourselves in is a direct result of our dominant mindset. Materialistic, mechanistic, centrifugal. Always pushing outward.
Trying to conquer nature.
Trying to conquer and exploit nature with outward explosive force. Ignoring the underlying interdependencies and the vital inward implosive forces that actually create and sustain life.
So maybe a shift from competition to cooperation, pressure to suction, perhaps even balancing those forces like nature does.
Precisely. Nature thrives through a dynamic balance of complementary opposites. You could view it as balancing feminine, nurturing, drawing in forces, and masculine, expanding outward forces.
And humanity needs that balance too.
Schauberger believed humanity desperately needed to find a similar balance, moving away from a solely competitive, dominating approach towards one of cooperation with nature and within society to find a sustainable path forward.
This deep dive into Viktor Schauberger has been truly eye-opening. I mean, he presented such a radical, nature-centric worldview and a set of principles that just stand in stark contradiction to so much of conventional science and technology as we understand it.
Yeah, his ideas were often dismissed, weren't they? Seen as outlandish or impractical. And yet, as the source meticulously lays out, they seem to offer explanations for phenomena conventional science still struggles with.
And propose potential solutions to some of our most pressing modern problems just by asking us to look at nature's own methods.
Exactly. Just observe how nature actually works.
It really forces you to pause and consider. What if our entire understanding of energy, motion, maybe even the fundamental nature of life itself is fundamentally upside down, just as Schauberger suggested?
It's a huge question.
What incredible possibilities might open up if we truly learn to observe, understand, and work with nature's deepest, most vital principles, rather than constantly trying to force our will upon them. Something to think about the next time you see a swirling stream, maybe, or just feel the wind on your face.